Hello everyone, welcome to The Tall Weaver. I'm Andrew, The Tall Weaver, and today we are going to be doing a deep dive into the first loom that I lusted after, the Louet Delta. The inspiration for this comes because I have been asked by Louet to be one of the creators of Louet, which is just a social media post where they call out what I make, what Louet products I use, that kind of stuff. So it's not like a paid promotion or anything, but I just thought it was a good excuse to finally make this video. So as I said in one of my previous videos, I strongly prefer Louet looms. And I've currently got a David, a Delta, a Spring, two Janes, and I used to have an Erica. So I've got a pretty big spread of all of the Louet line. But I feel like the Delta is just not as loved, not as appreciated, and not as called out as often as it should be. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Louet Delta, and it will be a story in 3 parts. Story part 1, identification. Story part 2, acquisition. Story part 3, restoration. So without further ado, let's get started. So I got my first floor loom in early 2021. That was the Louet David. I really loved it. It was a great loom, great floor loom. I still love it. I use it all the time. But the main problem with it is it's a little itty bitty bit short for me. I've made a couple of modifications to it to make it a little bit more comfortable for me to use. My knees don't hit the breast beam anymore, that kind of stuff. But there are definitely some issues that just can't be overcome with a loom that small, and someone at 6'4", I think 190 something centimeters for those of you in metric land. So yeah, no, it just doesn't quite work out right. So I started looking at other looms, and there aren't a ton of looms that are specifically geared towards tall people that are advertised as such. I know that some of the more traditional, like Scandinavian style big boxy looms work better for tall people. I've used a few of them thanks to my friends having them. And I would agree, they definitely do accommodate different body shapes a little bit better. But that takes up a lot of space. I live in an apartment. That's not going to happen. So I had to look into other areas. So I was looking through YouTube and I came across an older video that I think was a co-release with the Jane Stafford video where she explains how to like dress the Spring 1 and also talks through all the rest of the Louet line. And the Delta really stood out because it was so tall. I mean, it is so tall comparatively. So at that moment, I was like, okay, so what is this thing? I started looking at the Woolery. I started looking at Louet's website. I started looking at Jane's website. I went and looked at the videos in which Jane Stafford uses the Delta. She uses it a little bit in season 2, a little bit in season 1, but she mentions it's not her favorite loom because it doesn't quite fit her frame. So it's definitely a larger loom. And I started really getting into the idea of getting one. And then I saw the price tag. At that time, it was about $12,000 before tax, fully loaded, which is, of course, the only way I would ever want it because of who I am as a person. As a result, I ended up putting that on hold temporarily and just saying, well, if I ever see one used, fine. And I started looking more and more into it, looking at other looms, and I kind of started looking at the Nihilus 2 by Leclerc. It's marketed as a loom that fits taller people a little bit better, but it is really a large footprint. It is very heavy. And they don't really make the system that I would especially want. I couldn't find out a lot about their countermarch system, which is what I was really looking forward to. So after a few more months of looking around, comparing different options, I was in talks with a retailer to figure out like the logistics of actually getting it shipped to me because it does ship freight. The castle comes as one large, giant freight box. And at that point, I was already living here in Chicago. I live in a walk-up. It would be very challenging to actually get the whole thing upstairs in that box. And like, there was just a lot of logistical hassle that I was kind of concerned about. So as a last-ditch effort, I posted on Ravelry in the Warped Weavers group asking if anyone, 1, had a Delta that I could try out, or 2, had any thoughts on the Delta itself, since it's an uncommon loom. As of now, I think I know of only 2 other people with Deltas, including the person who let me try their Delta. So after trying that, I wasn't sold after the first trial, and then she invited me back to try it again, and at that moment I fell in love. So I knew that was the loom for me, but here we come to the acquisition phase. Plot twist, someone reached out saying that there was a Delta that they had in storage that they were willing to sell. They just wanted to get rid of it and wanted to sell it for the price that they bought it for used. So I would be the third owner of this Delta. Um, Turns out they were about 5-ish hour drive away from me. So then it was time for acquisition. The acquisition of the loom was fast, but delayed longer than I wanted it to. So of course, everyone is like super excited to get the thing that they want to buy when they buy it after they agree to make the purchase, right? So I actually had to travel for work. I rarely have to travel for work, but I had to travel for work that week. So there was no way I could do it. And I was very anxious about like the seller finding a new buyer or changing their mind. It was, one of those kind of situations. So I ended up setting up time as soon as I was able to get back. Someone agreed to travel with me in a big pickup truck, and I was bringing my little SUV, and we hiked over to Eastern Michigan together. The loom was in mostly assembled shape, so I could actually like test it out a little bit, check it out, and it was, obviously it's beautiful and wonderful. Yeah, once I was there, it actually looked smaller in person than it does in photos and videos, to me at least. And now I'm very used to it, so this just feels like average, right? And that happens with everyone. But so this is the 130 centimeter or 52-ish inch model, 12 shaft, 14 treadle, and it is just amazing. As I was inspecting it, the beater was up against the wall in different small pieces. It looked a little eh. And then I noticed that some of the Texsolve was weird, like a little discolored, and there was a little bit of fraying and some additional marks with different colored markers and stuff like that. So I was like, but okay, whatever. These are uncommon. It's what I want. I took it. So took it all apart, mostly. The castle stayed mostly assembled, but the bottom frame came out, the castle came out all in one piece. The treadles and everything got disconnected. Like it was all in different pieces. And it was a good thing we brought two fairly large vehicles, because just the base and the castle alone took up the whole pickup truck and the bed and the back of the truck. Between the two of us, we drove back through Chicago Sunday evening traffic, which was not super fun, but survived it, hauled it up the stairs, and then here it lives. It will have to be disassembled to come out of this building again. It is just too big. It is, I think, 34 inches deep, fully folded. So it doesn't fit through standard doorways, and it certainly doesn't fit through my weird doorways here. So the acquisition was complete. I had my beautiful Delta, and it was time to start putting it to work. So having identified and acquired the loom, it's time to start using it, right? No problems. And that's why this phase is called restoration, because there were problems. Uh, I was able to get the first few warps on, no issues. Getting used to the countermarch mechanism, getting used to the rear hinge treadles, all of those pieces. I ordered the Louette bench to go with it instead of the bench that it came with. And then slowly but surely, I started noticing some of the quirks and oddities. Firstly, I noticed that some of the rubber pieces that hold the back part were a little dry and cracked and gross, so those are available as replacement parts. That was fine. When they released the Spring 2, they released new end caps for the Heddle shafts here, so that you can pop them on and off without having to completely remove them from the Texsolve that runs through the countermarch system, which was great. I wanted that, so I replaced those for just the top pieces. The spring comes with them on both, the top and the lamb, or the shafts and the lambs, but I just wanted them for the shafts, which in retrospect, I regret just doing the shafts, because I did find out that I had a bit of a problem with all of the Texsolve in the entire countermarch system. It was quite old. It was quite beaten up. When I asked Louette how old they think that this loom is, they said it was probably made around like 2010, 2009-ish, so not terribly old in loom terms, but it had been kind of through the ringer a little bit. The Texsolve was frayed, it was filthy. I tried cleaning it, but that wasn't enough. So I accepted the fact that I was going to have to replace the entire countermarch system. So all 150 meters of TechSolve that runs throughout this entire system is new. Along with that, I had to figure out how to level all of these pieces with my extremely uneven floors in this apartment, and also how to make sure that I didn't screw up the whole system, what the appropriate amount of tension was, since I couldn't trust the tension that was already in the system, how the treadle should hang, are the treadle springs okay, all of those different pieces, because then I had to question every part of this loom, right? So yeah, throughout the course of all these different pieces from top to bottom, I have replaced all the TechSolve, adjusted it about 18,000 times to figure out the right tension. I think we finally have it. I replaced the TechSolve peg end caps on the shaft bars. I replaced the springs on each of the treadles. What else have I done? I replaced the TechSolve on the floating breast beam system, which was all dirty and frayed and rusted because some of the pieces had been exposed to water and rusted. One of the things I can't fix, and it doesn't bother me too bad, but the beater actually is bowed because it was stored on its side. So they took the pieces apart and they had them standing up and I think leaning. So there's a little bit of a bow on this side, just a little bit downward. I'm able to compensate for it with a little bit of cotton padding around the reed, so it works fine. But yeah, that was not great. I also replaced the backs of each of the beater pieces with just metric knobs. I replaced the part that holds the arms of the back beam in place with knobs as well, instead of just the standard nuts that were on there before. I've done a little bit of unauthorized work to address some of the wood warping that's happened where the legs of the beater sit. I've also used a little bit of spray silicone PTFE lubricant on some of the parts to reduce the noise. I've done a lot to this loom. But I love it. It's an amazing loom. My first crafting video, or my first project vlog on here, used this exclusively. It's my go-to for bigger projects, for projects that I need a heavier beat. It's just great. Right now, it's slowly but surely being dressed. I changed my mind like 3 times, but slowly but surely being dressed for a coverlet that I'm going to weave in 2 panels and then sew together. It's going to be a traditional overshot pattern out of the Green Book. If you follow my Instagram, you saw me post about it just last week. But yeah, I really don't think there's anything this loom can't do. It's a little bit easier to do some things than others. And you know, the reason I have other floor looms is just because it is easier to use other looms for some stuff. Like if I'm doing a 8-inch wide scarf, this beater is pretty heavy, especially with like a gouty reed in it, like a solid steel reed. So it's gonna pound stuff in. So it's kind of hard to get a delicate beat. Not impossible, just a little bit harder. It does require a full leg extension to use the treadles, which is great for me. It's fine for me. I know some people don't like it, but it does kind of get a little tiring after a while. So you can't weave for hours and hours at a time like you can on the Spring or the David without a little bit of a break, which not a bad idea. I know some people, I think it was Kelly Casanova mentioned that she actually likes that her large like Scandinavian countermarch does not let her sit and weave for a long period of time because she actually has to get up and advance the warp from the back side of the loom. So she actually has to get up and move. Not bad, because a good audiobook and you can just, or music, or TV show for some people, you can just weave away for hours without realizing it until you run out of bobbin. That's the story of how I got my Delta, or as I like to call him, BDE for Big Delta Energy. Thank you very much for sitting and listening. Coming up soon is going to be a couple project vlogs. I'm going to talk about another loom in an upcoming video. I've recorded it. I just have to figure out what I want to say about it. Follow me over on Instagram for more frequent updates on what's going on and what I'm weaving. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what your favorite loom is, why it's your favorite loom. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. Wishing you clean sheds and perfect bobbins. Until next time.